Episode 5, Luigi and Cobal. A few minutes after his conversation with the spirited young Yoshi, Luigi was sitting on the comfortable red couch, his gloved hands clasped around a warm teacup of delicious, freshly brewed Koopa tea. Cobal sat next to him, drinking a cup of tea as well. Even though he hadn't seemed much into the idea of tea when he had first entered the house, he seemed to be quite enjoying the cup Luigi had given him. It was good to know his private variation on the classic blend hadn't worsened with time. The two had been in the middle of a discussion regarding the Koopa Empire garrison at Peach's castle. Luigi was quite confident they wouldn't be much of a problem. If the most powerful person there was Boom Boom of all people, this would be a piece of cake. He was still worried about the possibility of dealing with Koopa Empire reinforcements, but he was planning on tackling the problem one step at a time. By the time Cobal had finished giving his estimates on how many weapons the Koopas possessed, spying on the garrison seemed to be a favorite hobby of his. Luigi was feeling more and more confident. This was nothing, just the typical bunch of troops Bowser usually had positioned in the grasslands. Anyone with the simplest bit of fighting skills could take them on. The question was, however, how was Cobal going to factor into all of this? He had set the plans for the retaking of Toad Town into motion, regardless of if that was a good idea or not, but what was next for him?
What do you want to do, Cobal?
Luigi asked, putting down his tea. Cobal took a long sip, clearly savoring the hot, cleansing effect Luigi's tea had. Then he looked at Luigi, his eyes inflamed with passion.
It's obvious, isn't it?
Cobal asked, clenching one of his blue fists.
I want to fight. I want to be able to do the same thing you did to those goons back in town. If you were even half as good as Mario was, Luigi, I gotta learn how it's done. I see.
Luigi nodded. He had been expecting something of the sort. Cobal didn't seem to be the sort of guy who would watch on the sidelines.
Well,
he said, standing up and scratching his head awkwardly,
I suppose I know a thing or two. I only need the basics.
Cobal reassured him.
Since I'm a Yoshi, I'm gonna fight a bit differently than you probably would. With my flutter jump, and my tongue, and all that.
Luigi nodded. He appreciated Cobal's passion, even though he clearly had no idea what he was planning on getting into. This wasn't going to be a simple romp to Bowser's castle to save the princess. Freeing Toad Town would only be the start of something much, much bigger. Even Luigi, who was still completely ignorant of the exact level of power and control the Koopa Empire had, knew that this was going to be won with one fight. Still, he had to admit he could be inspiring, especially to the oppressed Mushroom Kingdom people of his age. Come to think of it, he himself would probably be quite inspiring, too.
I have to stop comparing myself to Mario.
Luigi silently urged himself.
People are going to remember everything that I've done once I show up. They're not still going to forget me.
Glancing up at Cobal, gestured to him to come forward before moving in the direction of the front door.
All right, Cobal,
he said.
I'll teach you a thing or two. All right.
Cobal smirked, moving to follow Luigi out the door. Luigi led Cobal around the house to the backyard. The backyard of the Mario Brothers house had been neatly mowed that morning, and still smelled of freshly cut grass. Next to the house there was a small garden, with a little plot of fire flowers growing, just a small one, since a bigger one might end up attracting unwanted attention if a patrol ever happened to inspect his home, along with some very fine daisies. Luigi had planted the pretty white flowers almost 15 years ago to remind him of somebody he had left behind, and they had only grown in quantity since then. Every time Luigi looked at the garden, which was neat and orderly, just the way he liked it, he found himself reminded of the lovely Princess Daisy. What was she doing right now, he often wondered. Was she a prisoner? Was she dead? Luigi didn't like to think about that possibility.
Hey, if I'm gonna go out and do stuff now, maybe I can check up on her eventually.
He thought to himself as he glanced at the gardens while walking into the yard's center. It was a kind of frightening thought. What if she was dead? He'd never forgive himself. But enough of that. There was no use dwelling on the past anymore, no matter how much he wanted to. He needed to live in the now, for the people of the Mushroom Kingdom's sake.
So how do you do this?
Cobal asked, as the two faced each other under the bright blue Mushroom Kingdom sky.
Do you just jump? That's only the start of it,
Luigi responded. He thought back to his early days in the sewers of New Donk City. For some reason, the architects had thought it a great idea to create lots of gaping chasms in the sewers and place a lot of pipes in impossibly high places. Money had been tight for the two brothers at the time, and it was difficult enough finding a job in crowded city. Therefore, it was a simple situation, either find a way to plug those pipes, or go to bed hungry. That's where the brothers had first mastered their jump. It had been the only thing that he had ever been able to do better than his brother, he reflected with some satisfaction.
Cobal, when you jump, you really have to put a lot of effort into it.
He leaned down slowly. It felt kind of awkward, doing a super jump came so naturally to him now, breaking it into the basics just came across as sort of weird. He saw Cobal slowly getting into the same position.
Focus all your energy and all of your muscle power into your legs,
he instructed.
Then let go suddenly, kinda like when you stretch a string really tightly and then let go of it. Like this.
He leaped several feet into the air, so that he could clearly see the red roof of his house.
I really have to get rid of that moss,
he reflected to himself in the split second he was airborne, before falling back to the ground and landing safely on his legs. Cobal leaped up, following his example, but only managed to reach half of Luigi's height. He did, however, managing to get a bit higher by rapidly fluttering his legs. It only kept him in the air for a few more seconds, though.
How did I do?
Cobal asked, panting. Luigi could see he didn't have much experience flutter jumping.
Pretty good,
Luigi complimented warmly, clapping his hands.
You got the technique down. I'm sure that, with practice, you'll be jumping around like me and my bro did in no time.
Thanks, Cobal replied, looking slightly embarrassed as Luigi approached him and shook his hand to congratulate him.
Besides,
he commented, gazing down at Cobal's running shoes, which were white with an orange stripe,
remember what you said about finding your own style?
Yeah. Cobal nodded, looking away from Luigi and flicking his tongue in and out experimentally.
I've used this to steal food every now and then. When times got really rough for me and Toadbert, I guess. Plus, if I swallow something and I concentrate really hard, I can lay an egg with it inside it. Don't ask me how that works. I don't want to know.
Luigi shuddered, remembering all those times his old pal, the green-colored Yoshi, who simply went by his species name, for reasons he had never understood, had slurped up terrified Shy Guys and hurled them in egg form at their fleeing allies. While the Yoshis as a species were generally kind, nature-loving folks, there was something inherently terrifying about them that he had never bothered to dwell on too much. It was probably a good thing that they were friends rather than enemies.
Hey, Cobal!
Luigi remembered, snapping out of his thoughts.
There's something really important I have to tell you about fighting. What?
Cobal asked.
You can't just jump around and throw eggs, or whatever,
he said, thinking back to his years of experience.
You have to use strategy. That was Mario's problem in the beginning. Sometimes he'd even jump on spiky enemies cause he got so caught up in stomping head after head. What? Really? Mario did that?
Cobal gasped, his eyes wide.
That's crazy. I mean, he's a legend. Anybody could tell that unless your feet are hard as rock, that spike is gonna hurt. Even he started somewhere, Cobal.
Luigi nodded, somewhat wistfully.
Don't be afraid to add in a couple extra punches and kicks along the way,
he added as the thought came to him. He had never been able to hit as hard physically as his brother, but he couldn't count the number of times a well-placed punch had knocked back a fierce Goomba charging right at him.
And make sure to take note of your enemy's speed. Agility.
He broke off. Cobal was looking a bit unfocused, glancing into the forest that surrounded the yard or back at the house.
That's an awful thought to remember,
he commented.
Can't we just stick to basics for now? Yeah, sure. No worries,
Luigi replied. This was his first time teaching somebody, he had to remind himself to go slowly.
Hey, want me to make some lemonade?
He asked, feeling the sun beat down warmly upon his skin.
If we're going to keep on training, we're going to get pretty hot. Wouldn't mind some,
Cobal replied, stretching his arms. Luigi could tell he was just aching to train more.
All right, then.
Luigi nodded.
I'll be back in just a few minutes.
He smiled at Cobal before heading to the side of the house. Before he could disappear from sight, however, Cobal stopped him.
Hey, Luigi,
he said.
What?
Luigi asked, walking back a few steps.
What kind of a guy was the Yoshi who you knew?
He asked, genuine curiosity in his usually tough-sounding voice.
Toadbert says my father really looked up to him. Said he was the ideal Yoshi and the ideal friend to Mario. I wanna know who he was. Oh.
Luigi replied, smiling a bit. There was no way he was telling Cobal all of this now. There were enough stories about Yoshi to take up an entire day.
Me and my bro. We knew Yoshi for forever. He's actually quite a bit older than we were. He saved me when I was a baby, you know. Wow, he's gotta be at least 60 by now,
Cobal commented, gazing up at the sky.
Just think. An entire life full of Goomba stomping, egg-shucking action. Must have been some guy. Yoshi was real nice,
Luigi recollected.
He really cared at Mario and I. He even forgave my bro when he dropped him into a pit to boost his jump one time. Wish he was still around.
The last time Luigi had seen Yoshi, he had been licking up Goombas and turning them into eggs with the speed of an assembling line, chucking them at the ever-advancing line of Koopa Troop minions in a desperate last attempt to prevent Bowser's conquest. Whether he was alive or dead, things probably weren't too good for him right now.
He sounds great.
Cobal nodded, still gazing out over the clouds.
I wonder.
His voice trailed off.
You wonder what?
Luigi asked.
If the rumors are true,
Cobal continued.
They circulate around Toad Town every once in a while. Toadbert's a real believer in them. What rumors?
Luigi inquired further. Cobal turned to look at Luigi.
That the Yoshi who fought with Mario's still alive. And not only that, he's still alive and fighting,
Cobal said, a grin going on his face.
The only reason he hasn't freed Toad Town is because he's taken the fight right to the heart of the monster, Koopa Central, the Koopa Empire capital.
Luigi's eyes widened. A feeling quite like the rejuvenated qualities of a one-up mushroom seeped through his heart. Could he dare believe it? Was this too good to be true? Either way, as Luigi walked back to his front door to make the fruit punch he had promised, he was feeling more hopeful than he had for a long, long time.